This is the Advaita After Hours podcast, where we explore how spirituality influences our daily lives. Hari Om. I am Rajesh, and in today's conversation, Narayanan and I delve into the concept of non doership and its practical application in daily life. We explore the balance between personal agency and the acceptance of outcomes, discussing how we navigate success and failure without trying to become overly attached to either. The dialogue emphasizes the importance of intention behind actions and how reframing motivations can lead to a more fulfilling and less ego driven life. So sit back, listen, and reflect as you join us on this journey. All right, Hariom, how are you?
Hari. Good, good. How are you?
I am doing well. So, we wrapped up Bhakti, we talked a little bit about Guru, and we're trying to brainstorm about what to talk this week. And I think I kept talking about more things about gurus for sure. But one topic that I've been kind of dying to dive deeper into is I think something that's very practical for people like us, right? Like grahastas that are we still have a job, we still have a family. And as we kind of dip our toes into thinking about life in a little bit more of a kind of a Vedantic outlook, how do you start to balance some of these forces that at face value seem to be conflicting? The idea of not being invested in the results of your work, but still looking for things such as promotion and recognition. How do you accept that all people are the same and you have a little bit less agency in the outcomes, but still have kind of a task and project oriented approach to things? So maybe we'll just start off super broad and I'll ask you, when you think about the application of non doership to your day to day life today, tell us where you feel like you are today, and then we'll go into where you were before. And maybe you can define even to you what does non doership look like on a very practical day to day level?
All right. So it's a pretty deep idea. Sometimes we don't think about it. Sometimes we don't really feel like we understand even when we think about it. Right. The idea of non-doership. How do I still do what I have to do the best possible way that I can do it, and still not attach myself to the outcomes of the action. And that's the core tenet of lots of scriptures that we study and learn. But to apply it, I think it requires a certain bit of effort from our part. Like everything in all walks of life, without effort, nothing comes, right? So the way that I look at it, and it's been a very difficult journey in this, and it's an ongoing journey. There are parts in the day and parts of my work and parts of what I do where I can reasonably comfortably disassociate myself from, and I consider that as a good start, as not a bad thing that I can disassociate with. And there are still parts that I find it sometimes hard to disassociate. It's not for the lack of knowing that I should disassociate. It is just that the actions, the outcomes, and the effects of those outcomes are too hard to just let go if I simply say I'm letting it go. So one of the ways, and from a practical point of view, one of the ways that I have tried to do is think about my failures. Think about and look back at how many times I have failed in things that where many others have found it very easy and have succeeded. And say that if I have failed in some of those things that I know others have succeeded well, and I know that's not for lack of effort. I have put in as much effort probably in those things as well. Then it gives me a little solace in thinking that, it's not for lack of effort. It just happens that way. And I also think, it may be the same feeling for others also when they look at it, saying that, hey, we also have that same feeling, right? So looking at my failures have actually helped me. And sometimes it's easy to say that, what, since I failed it, I don't want to associate myself with it, right? And therefore, if I say that, okay, if I fail on with something, and I can say that, okay, it's my failure, I don't want to associate with it. Why not associate with something that I have done well and got a result for that as well? So that, in a practical level, has worked in the sense, it's these are all fleeting things, right? Any emotion is only good until the next one overpowers it. So you keep it as a worry or a happiness until something else takes over in this constant flow of thought. So that's one very simple example.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, right? I think for different people, it is easier to disassociate themselves from different things. I think for some people, success is easier to disassociate from. For some people, failure is easier to disassociate from. But being able to disassociate from both is when you truly know that you're practicing it equally, right?
And that is the harder part, right? And it depends on your vasanas, depends on how you're conditioned to think and act. And sometimes you feel that, look, so many people, so when I write a large proposal, I need this money to come in to sustain the group that I have to sustain. And sometimes you feel that, all of these people's careers depend on what I do. But that is a real unnecessary burden that you carry on yourself, right? Because it's only going to give you more botheration and trouble, and make you not able to focus on what you have to do well. And that may be the case. It may be that, lots of these people will have to, you have to sustain a lot of these people. But take a worry for that and then diminish the effort because of that anxiety is not worth it.
One reason this topic became very prescient for me is, at Chinmay Mission now for the 75th year, there's that Gita Panchamrit that we're going through, right? 5 selected verses. The first 2 verses for that um, kind of really go to the core of action, right? Like the first one is Uddhare
Very tough.
Tmanatmanam. There isn't any external friend or foe hurting or helping you. It's just you. But then the next verse that has been chosen is the Karmanyeva Adhikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana Ma Karma Phala Heturbhur Ma Te Sangostva Karmani. And I don't know this for a fact, but that might be probably one of the most famous verses from the
Famous
Bhagavad
one.
Gita. But those verses at first glance might seem contradictory, right? One is kind of saying take agency over your own future. And the second is almost saying don't take agency over your own future, just focus on your action, but then you have no agency over the outcome.
Correct.
How do you interpret
Y-
that, and how do you
Yeah, I mean, I
reconcile that?
no, I don't see contradictions there, right? The first one is, I mean, there is context in Bhagavad Gita also. So, 700 verses can't be just in one flow, I mean, applicable to all situations. And so there's some context to it. So contextually, it's been said. The first one, Udhared Atmanatmanam, comes in chapter 6 when you're talking about meditation, when all the karma yoga has already been taught and said, I've told you all the ways in which you have to act, and now you have to go to the next level of how to sublime all your actions. And at that point of time, the only way that, from a point of view of meditation, right? And we know that meditation is not an easy thing to do if you have done it or if you've started to do it. And it's likely that, like, it'll be like our New Year resolutions. We will do it for 3 days and then just drop it and pick it up next New Year for another 3 days. So he's basically saying that, you will have to lift up by yourselves. And you will be your best friend if you choose to do this. You will be the worst enemy if you don't choose to do this. So it's in that context of having to do the effort for anything. Doesn't matter whatever it is, you have to do the effort. And that's what he's been telling Arjuna, right? You've been worrying about, I'll be killing them, I'll be killing these people. The women of the country will become husbandless, kids will become fatherless. You're thinking about all of that while You are here in the battlefield, and you should be fighting now. Now, if you were really thinking about all of that, you should have averted the war. You should have done something. Oh, well, take 5 villages, take nothing, go somewhere else and avert the war. But having done this, having landed on this earth, having wore the garb of a grihastha, we can't run away from it saying that, so fight it, do self-effort. And the second one is from chapter 2. Before this was told, is the idea that, you have adhigara only on the action. The outcome is not in your hands, and we know that most of the time. But I do that with my 12th graders. Now we were doing that cause effect theory, right? Every effect has a cause. The effect is nothing but the cost manifested in a different form. It's only that the effect may appear at a different time than the cause. These are the three basic principles that Karmanyavadhigara is saying. You do an action, the effect is there. The effect may already be built in. If you have a seed, the tree is actually in the seed. You don't see it. You can't say that, oh, I don't see the tree and therefore there is no tree there, right? It's already built into the cause. The effect is already built into the cause. You don't understand it and therefore you think that you want a certain outcome that you desire. You take that out, do your best effort, and most of the time, things will align in such a way that your effort and outcome will match. If they don't match, that's where prasada buddhi has to kick in and say, you know what, I take it
There
with
must be
all
a
the
reason. Yeah.
all the prasad. Yeah, there must be a reason. This is a prasadam. Hey, Lord, you've given me so many good things where I didn't deserve it. Maybe I'll take a couple of bad things from you as well.
I think that's really well explained. Um, in my line of work, um, the uh, one of the things that when I was going through different specialties, one of the things that attracted me towards surgery was the ability to do something and see an immediate result, right? Get some immediate gratification, some instant feedback. But the other thing that's unique about at least my specialty is that many times, when something bad happens, one can talk about a Swiss cheese model or a host of different things going on. But a lot of times, at least in what I do, it's quite easy to make that Swiss cheese model very simple. There's usually just one hole, right? And you might be that hole. And I remember when I started my career, I had a string of bad outcomes. Things that, we have this conference every week called the Mortality and Morbidity Conference, right? So where every week in front of everybody, you have to review everything that went wrong for any patient that you treated in the intervening weeks. So in some ways, it can be a very like cathartic experience, but also it forces you to reflect primarily on the things that went wrong. And part of it, the analysis portion of those is for you to list out what were the technical things that you could have done differently, what were the cognitive things you could have done differently, what are the system factors that contributed. And as you go through that process, I think most people with any insight will find a number of things that they individually could have done differently at that point in time that would have had a dramatically different outcome on another person, right? And so one can easily see how that can add up to a lot of emotional burden to carry. And one of the most frequent questions that I get from residents, medical students is how do you deal with all of that? And for me, this idea that you talked about, this cause and effect, right? This idea that, when that patient comes, in some ways, their outcome is already within themselves. And the outcome that they eventually have is a result of everything that had occurred before. So to me, that has been personally really, really valuable in just kind of coping with things that happen. Sometimes you have no control, but many times you could have certainly done something different to have led to that outcome. And so that's why in the beginning I said, different people look at it different ways. So for me, that has become very valuable to do. But the thing I struggle with is when something goes well, right? And then you think back, even for a good situation, and you think, I did this, I did that, I made this decision. And then that becomes a recency bias, right? So next time a situation comes around, you use a lot of that same information to apply it. But also, invariably, there is some level of ego and confidence that comes up that lets you go on to the next day and carry that through. So in those situations, and sports people have the same thing, performing artists have the same thing. So in that situation, when you analyze that, how would you approach that? Is this an idea of selectively using, um, like selectively giving up agency when it's convenient and then taking agency when it's convenient? And then where is that fine line between having pride in what you can do, but not letting the ego overcome it? How do you start to define those lines? How would you create a mental framework for that?
Yeah. So that's I think a pretty deep question. You cannot do selective agency, that is for sure, right? You have to be consistent with the idea that effort is what is in my hands. The effort that I put in towards the action, all the past work that I do, all the prep work that I do, all the background work that I do, all the hours that I spend in perfecting my art to do what I have to do is within my hands. That's completely within my hands. And so this is the classic example that we do for sports person. The practice, the number of hours that you spend practicing is under your control. You can do that as much as you want to, but you may get a better opponent in the field that day, right? He who might thwart all your well laid out plans, and you might lose it. But if you still put your best forward, learn from your failure, come back and improve it, that's probably the best you can do, rather than cry about the best opponent or a good opponent that you got, right? So, I think you cannot have selective agency, whether you win or lose. As long as you put in your best effort, that's all what matters. But it's much more difficult in your field than it looks like for lots of other things, right? You can simply say, I did my best, but if you lose the patient, the people who lost have really lost it. You can say, I did my best. This is the best I did. And you would have definitely done your best. But it's very hard for somebody to take it because, you know, eh, things about success and failure in transient things versus life and death are very different things that people look at, right? In terms of how you own it and how you want to look at it. So in that sense, and I can really see that in your case, it might be a little more of a challenge to say that, you know what, I did my best, and then wash your hands off, saying that I don't have agency in it. But you don't have to say anybody. It's only for ourselves, right? This is not to convince anybody that what you have done or not done.
What about in success? How have you, um, in your career now, and maybe you can even go back to when you started your career, right? When you started as an assistant professor and somehow managed to get to where you are now, right? How have you controlled um, that fine line between pride and confidence, between expertise and authority? How do you thread that needle, or how do you try to thread that needle?
When I started, 25 years ago, there were, of course, obviously, in the life of an assistant professor, failures are more than successes. But I figured out a way to understand that you are playing with the averages. You have to. It is not that I write the best possible proposal, I create the best possible idea to have somebody fund me and do it. It is great, I should do that, but I should play the averages as well. So the effort I put in, and no proposal is too small, no money is too small to take, no graduate student is too bad to avoid. I don't do it now. I'm a little more selective in how I do it. But at that time, I had to beat the averages, and therefore the only thing that I had to do was just do slog, right? To a point where it would look like a headless chicken running around, and you don't even know why you're running around in many cases. But that is kind of you're doing it with lots of ignorance. You don't understand what actually you are supposed to do. You get conflicting mentors telling us different things from different places. And the landscape of funding is never a predictable scenario. And tenure is always never a predictable scenario also, right? So you tend to do a lot of things, and you say that, you know what, 51-49 would still be great. I don't have to be 80, 90, 10. 51-49 would still be great, because once you cross it, people will ask you, have you crossed it or not? How did you cross it is not a question. And I also don't know how I crossed it. If three people voted against me or six people voted against me, I don't know. Right?
As
I
long
have
as you
no
got
clue, and
the
I should not be
as long as
searching
you
for
got the
that, because
award, right? Yeah.
correct. And I should not be searching it, because if I knew that, you know what, these three people did not did not do that for me, then I may think, why is that and all of that. So those times it was like that, but now I'm a little more selective. The way I take success has become, to be frank, much more mellowed. I have kind of gotten to the zone where, um let's shut it, forget it. There was an ad for in India for some Bajaj scooter, right? Fill it, shut it, forget it. I've become in a submitted, write it, submit it, forget it. Proposals, they come, they don't come. I can write one more. I have my ideas stolen by others. Those people who reviewed my proposals did not fund me, and then I figured out that they were in the panel, and I found out that they wrote the very same idea they stole from me. I don't get upset. I was told by somebody saying that, what, your proposal got declined, and this guy is submitting that same idea again. I said, that's fine. I'm not a one-trick pony. I can create one more idea. That's fine. Somebody takes it now, right? I mean, 20 years ago, I would have been very upset, cried over, made a big mess about it. Now I was in a conference last month with him, and we had dinner together. I think he knows that I know that he has done it, and I know that he did it, but both of us never.
So
We completely.
how did that happen over time? Was it just like a gradual maturity process? One thing that people often say is that it's very easy to, um, like, once you already have the comforts in life, it's easy to not care about the necessities. So, meaning that, is it so much wisdom, or is it just that you
A
have the
very good.
luxury of not having to care?
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question, and I've asked myself this question. Um, if it is only luxury, the ego would have risen up and said, "My idea." Even in luxuries, my ego would have said, "My idea. How dare
Right,
he do
right.
it?"
Good point.
Right?
Yeah.
I just kind of let it go and said, that's fine. One idea is not going to be the end of the world. And I took it as a challenge. Look, am I a one trick pony with my one idea taken away by somebody else? Am I now out of ideas? Hey, I can create more, right? I can generate more. So I think if it were a luxury, I would have really, my ego would have really been hurt. But I did not really. I think I let it go and didn't really think about it at all. So I don't know if it's maturity or whatever, but I felt good about not reacting to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I truly struggle with is sometimes the motivation is very interesting. I was having dinner with a friend, and we're talking about internal motivation versus external motivation, right? And they said very clearly that their primary motivation is external motivation, whether that is having someone acknowledge them, that drives them, or having someone admonish them, that fear drives them. And I think I also experience mixed levels of internal and external motivation. But a lot of the external motivation is for things that I may not find important for my own satisfaction, but that are important for my career progression, right? I mean, a perfect example is, even when you look at, maybe, okay, I'll speak about me because I think you might do much more valuable work. When I look at my CV, right? Maybe there's about a sixth of my CV that I think makes a difference. The other five, six are just fluff because the CV needs to look more attractive, right? That's how I make it associate professor. If my CV is very measly, I don't, right? So when you have external motivation, which is a reward system that somebody else has set up, and you do something for that external motivation, where does that fit into this framework of acting not out of desire for the outcome, but acting for the sake of the action?
um, from an external recognition point of view, like you said, right? The progression in our careers, I don't think you should completely have a view where, the fact that I am not looking for rewards for my action should not make me polish my resume and put it for the right purpose that I have to. I don't think that needs to be thought of that way, right? External recognition is if you become an associate professor, if that recognition helps you do something more than what you're doing now and be able to contribute better to what you're doing now, but than what you're doing now, that's fine, right? You still work towards that goal, not as something that, what, my life will be shattered if I don't become an associate professor. My life actually can be made more fruitful for somebody else also if I become that, because I will have more resources to do this. I will have more responsibilities that I can take. I can have more control over things that I actually can do better. And in that sense, you can. So the even so we all eat food, right? And that's what, when we do the brahmarpanam brahma, that's what it is, right? We all eat. And is it possible for you and me to say that, what, it's only for the body to sustain, I don't care about taste? Hey, we want some taste. So, but then how do I take that taste and say I'm not attracted and kept attached to that taste all the time? I simply say that taste is also for you. The taste that I get in my food is also for you, right? So now you kind of change that mental attitude. So none of
Yeah.
your effort changes. None of your effort changes. You still put the exact same amount of effort, but instead of saying I would look great, I'll say while I look great, I may be able to do it for, so in a yajna spirit, I may be able to do it for somebody else also. And
Yeah,
so,
I
you
think
know,
I think
going
that's such a subtle nuance, right? I mean, it's such a subtle nuance that what you're trying to do as an auto suggestion for yourself is to reframe it in your own mind, right? So it's less about what it does for you, but what it enables you to do because of the platform that you get potentially.
correct. And for all the people that are looking for a position to be actually able to support somebody else only when they have a position. If they do it in that spirit, there is nothing more pristine than that, right? So so politicians, for example, I always think about, because we can't read their mind. We look at and generalize them and say, oh, they want power, they want this, they want that. Maybe they want it, but if you take a subtle change and say, what if that guy really wants to serve and he wants that position of power to actually serve? Isn't that such a noble cause? Isn't that such a noble idea to do it? And so because I don't know somebody, and because somebody is only talking bad about somebody else, I can't run that road, right? I need to figure out, and I need to think about what it would be. And if you think about it positively, there is lots of things that you can, subtle changes, and you can say that things that you've thought as really selfish, maybe not that selfish.
I know, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Um, the very cynical take on it would be that maybe this kind of rebranding are just ways for you to justify the ego or justify the continued feeding of the ego. So, how would you respond to that? I think that's a fair
So
response. And I think
my
it's a question we have to keep asking ourselves all the time, right?
and that's a very important question, right? So now it goes about to, is the action and what I derive from the action for satisfaction of what I have done and I'm able to do, or to project my action onto something else. And that's a very different thing, right? So if for example, and I do this to Balvihar students all the time. If I tell them, if I call all of you, 10 of you, let's go clean the entire Balvihar, what is your motivation? Let's go clean. It's very dirty. Mats are dirty. It's vacuuming. Come, let's go. What's your motivation? Right? Some of you might say that, Narayanan uncle called and we can't not go. We'll have to go. Fair enough. Some of you will say, oh, it's such a noble cause. Let me go and help it. Some of you will say, oh my God, why am I signed up for this, right? But does the mat and the carpet and the floor care? With whatever attitude you do, the carpet and the mat and the floor doesn't bother, right? Same thing with giving charity. Somebody, I give somebody $100 with my mind full of satisfaction, saying this is what I could afford to help you, or saying that, oh my God, I have to lose this $100. Will the guy taking the money have any difference? It's for him $100, right? The monetary value has not changed. It is, to me, the value of giving. So in a very similar way, it is in my mind the value of how I have done it is the ego rising. If I'm in my mind trying to say, oh, why is nobody congratulating me on this wonderful thing? I have done this so much, and people are walking around as if they haven't even understood this or seen this, I'll be bothered all the time. But if I did this and said, look, I did this, and somebody is benefiting out of it, and I move on, I'll be happy. It's how we internalize that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think I see the subtlety of the point. I mean, I think the intentionality with why you do things does affect the recipient also in addition to you. So, for example, I think even though, and this is just nitpicking, but even though you're giving that $100 to the charity, whether you give it selflessly or you give it because you're going to get a plaque on the wall, or you're guilty, or everyone else is giving it, so you feel like if you don't give it, you'll look bad. On a very superficial level, I think the recipient of the $100 will feel the same regardless of how they got it. But I think that those $100 carry a different energy that goes to that person depending on the energy that it was given with. It's sort of like eating a meal, that I think when you feed your family or you feed guests, the um, intention with which you cooked does at some probably subtler level impact the recipients also. So in that sense, I don't fully believe that that the intention with which we do stuff only affects us, but I think it affects everybody else. I'll give you a perfect example. Okay, like in academic medicine, um, one reason. So in academic medicine, unlike I think other academic fields, tenure has really kind of gone away as a concept. Tenure is just not really a thing anymore. So then the primary motivation to still look for promotion is not even monetary. Like, unlike before, you know, whether you're an associate, assistant, or a full doesn't really even change your compensation that much. It might be a very minute drop in the bucket. The main reason ends up being the impact that you can have on trainees and on the organization. So it's more about how can you impact the training program, how can you impact the program, how can you have a bigger impact on the system of care delivery, and and in that, but at the same time, it's very nice when you have to give a talk or something and you're putting together your slide to be able to write, associate professor or full professor, right? So there's that ego. But especially in that circumstance, I think in my mind, it really does matter even for the end recipient. So, for example, if you have someone that's engaged in teaching, whether they're teaching because they truly want to impart knowledge or they're teaching because it's a means to an end, um, I think the people that are being taught feel it. And somehow within the energy of the world, that is recorded and continues on. And
I,
and
I
so for me, I keep
yeah.
that in mind a lot also.
Right. I mean, I think you're right in the sense, and there are examples that are in that sense. But I'm simply looking at the transactional value of what you give something for, right? And if that is what you are worried about, for example, anger, right? If I am angry, the person who I am angry at will feel it. Yes, emotionally he might feel it, and him. But who is it hurting more? It is me who is hurting, who the anger is hurting more than the person who I showed my anger to, right? So from that point of view, I think the giver has more. I mean, at the end of the day, the control is with the giver. It is with me as to how I should give. It is with me as to what I should give, right? So control is with me, and therefore how well I can do it and with what attitude I can do it matters. And you're right, the taker also will feel it.
So I think that's something um, today's conversation has really emphasized for me is this idea that even when you aspire for something professionally, right? So we're thinking outside of like the spiritual transformation realm. We're thinking purely in the material realm of the world, right? Like even when we aspire for something, we ought to rebrand it in our minds and in some ways tell ourselves differently on why we aspire for it. Because I'm a really strong believer, and I talk about this a lot in our junior chick classes, that we listen to ourselves, right? Like when we say something to ourselves out loud, after a while, we listen and we believe it ourselves too. So, this idea of sort of saying, yes, I want to get that next promotion, I want to become the manager, I want to become the section lead. It's totally different if we let ourselves say, oh, it's because I can make more money, or it's because then people will finally realize I'm important, or it'll help me get over my imposter syndrome. Versus if you look at it from the standpoint of what does it enable you to do that is still mission driven. um, I don't think that's being cute or disingenuous. I think that is trying to reinforce the positive value that you want to follow.
Right. And otherwise there is no way the world will go forward, right? If all of us believe that, whatever happens will happen, I'll do something, effort is not in my, I mean, it'll become a very dull and dreary society where nobody will do. You need to have an you talked about internal and external motivation, and not everybody are um, are are refined enough to have the levels of internal motivation that you need to drive on their own energy. They need something else. So they need to be shown something that they can aspire for. And if they, in their mind, use it the right way, that aspiration to go for that goal in the right way, you can make a lot of individual progress as well. But if you can also get sidetracked by being very selfish, because if you look at lots of people who are very money minded, I know a lot of people, I have very good friends who spend their entire days in front of stock market. These guys have money for 3 generations. They have, I mean, but this guy, he keeps calling me, and he wants me to be part of his stock group to discuss things. I said I have no interest. I said, number one, I have no money to do all of this, and number two, I've really no interest to daily look at and which stock and do all of those. And I said, I find my interest in other kinds. He says, you're missing a lot, don't you want a good life for your kids? And I said, those are all very important, life searching questions. But you need to have that level of that kind of an attitude also. But I've seen such people who are very, very focused on material stuff, and of course, you can't you can't tell them that, what, you have to be more giving. Then they'll say that, oh, what the heck are you saying? I just in my hometown in the temple, I just gave the money to completely gold cover my temple. So you know what, you've done it, right? So in his mind, all is being favorably done. So it's that shift in attitude that we need, and do whatever we have to do in the best possible way, the outcomes, the effort will come. But again, there is a connection as to the karma cycle, right? You can never beat it. It that cycle you can. I think I had lots of arguments to lots of people. I was not a non-believer in karma, but I was not sold on to this idea. But then I think now I believe that karma cycle cannot be beat.
Really
One
nice.
right, and one more thing, if you think about it, right? At least in our lives, what do we really have to complain? What do we really have to complain?
Yes.
And that pretty much is it. And if you do anything, you're doing an injustice to the nature that has given you all of this, right? You should simply be thankful and try to spread what you can do well to people who are less fortunate, or who wants it. I mean, what do we have? You can always pick up things that you're uncomfortable with, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to what is happening very transactionally in the world, what people are going through day by day, we don't have to suffer through that,
Correct.
right? I mean, we could have, for all that we know, we could have been born in Gaza. We could have been born in a really war-torn area, right? Or in India itself. I mean, how many places have we seen? Like, we could have been born. We could have been in any of those places. I mean, it's just statistical chance, and this is really the throw of dice that have landed you here. And there's nothing to be complaining about.
Back up.
Hari Om.